In the 1960 campaign, Lyndon B. Johnson was elected as vice president to John F. Kennedy. After Kennedy's assassination, Johnson was sworn as the 36th president, marking the start of the Great Society. The Great Society was a set of domestic programs launched by Lyndon B. Johnson in the 1960s with the goal of eliminating poverty, racial injustice in America. It led to significant social, economic, and legislative changes, but also faced challenges and criticisms. The 1960s was a period of major social and political change like the civil rights and countercultural movements, wars, political tension, and assassinations. This period caused a shift in society's norms and caused a generational gap.
The legacies of death, renewal, and opportunity attached to the Johnson administration are ironic, confusing, and uncertain. They will likely remain that way. Some of the major impacts of the Great Society are poverty reduction. One of the key goals of the Great Society was to eliminate poverty in America. They introduced programs like Medicare and Medicaid, significantly expanded access to healthcare. The Great Society increased federal funding for public schools, specifically those in disadvantaged areas. It aimed to reduce educational inequality, helping to create a more level playing field for children from low-income families. Long-term impacts were many of the programs initiated during the Great Society era have had lasting effects such as Medicare, Medicaid, and civil rights laws. The war on poverty helped reduce extreme poverty rates, although some critics argue that poverty rates remain high and that the Great Society's objectives have not been fully achieved in terms of eradicating poverty.
Some of the successes of the Great Society are civil rights advancements. One of the most important successes of the Great Society was the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This legislation banned discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex. Also, the national origin in employment, public accommodations, and education. This was a massive step in ensuring that there will be equality for African Americans. Similarly, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 came after and removed discriminatory voting practices like literacy tests and poll taxes. This allowed more African Americans to vote, especially in the South. These pieces of legislation were the pillars of the Great Society's successes in addressing racial inequality and injustice. The second one was war on poverty. The war on poverty, this was central to the Great Society's agenda, resulting in the creation of Medicare and Medicaid in 1965. These programs provided health insurance for the elderly and low-income individuals. Millions of Americans who had no access to health care were now able to receive medical care. The Economic Opportunity Act of 1964 also created programs like Job Corps and Head Start, which help young people and low-income individuals gain education and job training. These initiatives were crucial in addressing poverty and giving people the tools to improve their lives.
Some of the failures and challenges of the Great Society was persistent poverty. Despite the war on poverty's efforts, poverty continued to be a significant issue in the U.S. While there was a decrease in the poverty rate during the 1960s, the goal of completely eliminating poverty was not achieved. Many urban and rural areas continue to struggle with economic hardships. The efforts to combat poverty were hindered by the long-standing structural inequalities in American society that were not easily overcome, even with the introduction of new programs. Another challenge was racial inequality. Although the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act were monumental successes, racial inequality did not disappear. Discrimination continued in housing, education, and employment, and the African Americans still face significant barriers to economic success. The urban riots of 1960s were a clear indication that many African Americans felt frustrated and disenfranchised despite the legal progress made through the Great Society's reforms.
The Great Society stands as a complex and multi-layered achievement, much like a character that is both flawed and heroic. It succeeded in bringing about monumental changes, especially in the areas of civil rights, healthcare, and education. However, it has also faced significant challenges. Poverty, racial inequality, and the effects of the Vietnam War limited its ability to fully realize its vision. The Great Society's legacy is one of progress and setbacks, a reminder that change is often difficult and imperfect. While the Great Society made significant strides in addressing inequality and poverty, its challenges and failures show that even the most ambitious programs cannot overcome all societal issues on their own.